Coming up next week, it's been nearly 200 years since the U.S. was first attacked on its own soil. We'll take you on a historic boat ride of the Patuxent River.
Every American alive today remembers September 11th. And almost all of us know what December 7th means. But there are almost no Americans who know what August 19 means. And that is the day when the boot of the invader actually set foot on the American shores to march overland and destroy the capital of the United States. It was a significant moment in our history. Hopefully will never be repeated. But it's one of the trilogy of American tragedies of our history.
It was on August 19, 1814, during the War of 1812, that British troops landed at Benedict, Maryland, on the shores of the Patuxent River. From there, the British fleet chased the American flotilla upshore, right through Prince George's County. In the first of my two-part series, we'll take a look at the water route that led to the first attack on our nation's capital.
When the British forced the United States fleet into the Patuxent, we became locked in without much hope. The entire state of Maryland had voted against the war except for the city of Baltimore and the Harford County. Southern Maryland was adamantly against the war. This war was as divisive among our own people as the Iraqi War, as the Vietnam War.
Author Don Sept has written 2 books about the War of 1812, a war not well known to most Americans. In his latest book, he talks about some of the reasons for the battle against the British, how Americans felt their rights at sea had been violated, and how the U.S. invasion of Canada contributed to the battle.
In the summer of 1814, the war in Europe ended, and they sent an army over here to the Chesapeake, basically to divert the Americans' attention from the Canadian border. But the real course of invasion is up through Prince George's County, via Upper Marlboro, into the District of Columbia.
It's believed that these flatlands on the Hills Landing area of the Patuxent are the actual location where the U.S. flotillamen came ashore to join the forming American Army.
At the time, Americans weren't sure which way the British were intending to go.
So the Americans are flummoxed. We don't know what to do. So what do? We retreat. And we retreat to a place called Long Oldfields, which is now the Penmar Shopping Center.
Today, you can still find remnants of the humiliating American defeat. Sept estimates there are about 30 shipwrecks in Prince George's County along the Patuxent River, many of which came from the Chesapeake flotilla during the War of 1812. And Sept says right under our boat is the remains of what most likely is the USS Scorpion.
It was used as a hospital ship because we found the fleet surgeon's equipment on it. It was a warship because we found military accoutrements on it.
And tomorrow we'll take a look at the changes along the Patuxent River over the last 200 years. Yesterday, we took a step back in time during a boat tour of the Patuxent River. It's been nearly 200 years since Joshua Barney and his fleet fought the British along the Patuxent during the War of 1812. In the second of my two-part series, we take a look at how the Patuxent has changed over the last 2 centuries.
The American fleet was lined up with a number of merchant vessels that were seeking its protection. 103 men were left to destroy it, and the whole fleet went up one by one by one by one. Just as the British rounded Bristol Landing or Pig Point, they could see them lined up. This marsh wasn't here then. This river was much wider then. If you look at the highlands on either side, you see what was the shoreline that they saw.
Both before and after the War of 1812, many of Maryland's main ports of entry into the U.S. were along the Patuxent River. Ships would navigate the waterway, often carrying slaves or tobacco en route.
Our river reach here was navigable in colonial times up to about 1800, as far north as Bowie, or what is now Bowie, to Queen Anne's Bridge. Queen Anne's town was an international seaport, believe it or not. And today I guess there's about 40 or 50 families maximum living in the immediate area.
But today the only ships you'll find in the Patuxent are underwater. Urban growth and poor farmland practices have caused silt to build up, making the river impossible to navigate.
When you're talking about the depth or the quality of the water, what's happened since when the British first sailed up here?
Well, one obvious thing is that there's less bottom. The water is much shallower because there's a lot of silt and mud and other things that have poured into the waterway from the surrounding ground disturbance, construction activity and runoff from highway construction and things of that sort. So there's less navigable channel. You can't get deeper water, you can't get bigger ships up, and the area becomes less of a highway. It used to be a highway for civilization. It becomes more of a sewer, more of a drainage way for the surrounding paved surfaces.
Tutman says protecting the river is a constant struggle.
Well, I think the future hangs in balance. On one side, we have an economy that's in rough shape, and so things have slowed down. And so we might have an opportunity to preserve more, get a little more momentum up for saving some things. The downside, however, is that because in the Maryland, we use the transfer tax on real estate transactions to fund preservation, that means there's less public money to buy land, less public money to buy parks, less public money to put easements on land in order to preserve it for the public interest.
With the upcoming 200th anniversary of the War of 1812, Sept and others would like to see tourism develop to commemorate the event, similar to what Virginia has done with the Civil War.